Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. Thank you to all of you for tuning in to this lovely GSMC Football Podcast, which is always brought to you by the great GSMC Podcast Network. As you all know, as I've said many times, go and check out that podcast network wherever you can find your podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm telling you, it is worth your while. I'm your host, as always, the big Kayvon, coming with you guys live from my bedroom here, or my office/bedroom, I should say. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and whoa, what a week of sports we have here. What a weekend of sports we just had. And so much is going on in the NFL world, whether it's talking about the games or whether it's talking about what's happening with the coaching searches. That's right, we've got another head coach, another organization that will now be looking for a new head coach after the big news came out today that the Philadelphia Eagles have decided to part ways with Doug Pederson. Now, anyone that's been following along this show since the beginning, we thank you. Anyone that's been following along the show as of recently, we thank you. Anybody that is just now tuning into the show, we thank you as well. This is now episode number 48, and everybody knows that I called for Doug Pederson's job. Now, I'm not somebody that likes to call for other people's jobs. I don't want to take away anyone's job. But I also know that it's my job to report my opinions and to express what I am seeing, what I'm hearing, and what I believe is the issue. And Doug Pederson, while he wasn't the full problem, and let's understand that, let's be fair, he was not the full problem. He had a lot to do with why the Eagles were such a disaster. And using the word disaster is really being generous this season. So we're going to get into that, and I everyone that's been watching, been listening, you guys know that how I stand on this, so I wanted to just open that up and say, don't worry, we are going to get into that. That is a very important topic, and we're going to hit on that topic to start off segment and quarter number 2, so stay tuned for that. Now, we'll just quick break down the show, and then we're going to get right into something that was just historic, remarkable, something we haven't seen in a long time. So we're going to get right into that. But real quick to break down the show, so much going on. Playoff games, wild card weekend over, division round is here. Woo! And I swear, every single game is a good one. Every single division round game is a good one. You got the Rams and the Packers. The Rams just winning by their defense. John Wolford, their backup quarterback, comes in, gets hurt right away, hard hit to the head, had to go to the hospital. Thank goodness he is okay. Jared Goff comes in, does just enough on offense. Cam Akers, the rookie running back, puts on a show, splits through the defense, running left and right, and of course that defense gets another defensive touchdown. The Seattle Seahawks let us down once again. Really have a lot of questions for them going into the offseason, something we'll do later on when we start to talk about off-season shows and everything like that. You've got that as the first game on Saturday. You got the Baltimore Ravens finally getting over the hump with Lamar Jackson, who really just took over with his athleticism against the Titans, won them the game, put the team on his back, taking on the Buffalo Bills, who also were able to get over the hump and win a playoff game. That's the Saturday primetime NBC game. On Sunday, the Cleveland Browns with the shocking upset, taking on the number one team in the league, the Kansas City Chiefs. And then the Sunday night game, the game that I think a lot of people cannot wait to watch, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the New Orleans Saints, the battle of Mr. Old versus Mr. Old, Drew Brees versus Tom Brady. The Saints have gotten the best out of the Bucs twice so far this season. Can they do it 3 times? So that's just a quick opening slate of the division round games. You guys already know this. We're going to break open all of those games, break them down left and right, give you our picks, give you our opinions, give you our takes. We're going to look at the new hirings. There has not been any hirings yet so far for these teams looking for head coaches and GMs, which is really a big shock. So we're expecting any time now, any day now, for the first domino to fall. Usually we're about 10 days after Black Monday, they like to call it, and we still haven't seen any hirings yet, which is very odd. Usually you see a couple dominoes fall right away. So the fact that we haven't seen that, we believe that some should be coming any minute now. We're going to talk about Eagles and Doug Pederson, as I said, and then let's give a big congrats to Alabama, Nick Saban. Dominated season, going undefeated, winning the championship really with ease. Is this the greatest Alabama team we've ever seen? Definitely is on offense. Is this the greatest college offensive football team we've ever seen? I think it might be. And there are a lot of pieces that are just special and that are going to be ready to dominate in the NFL as well. So we'll talk all about that coming up, but I want to start off the show talking about the big-time upset, the shocking win, something that the state of Ohio has been wanting for a long time, and that was the Cleveland Browns heading into Pittsburgh to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. What a win that was by Cleveland. And what a terrible performance that was by the Pittsburgh Steelers. First of all, I just want to go here. And a lot of people might say this is hyperbole, just trying to take over the moment with a big take. But to me, this Browns playoff win is one of the most memorable, amazing playoff wins, arguably, of all time. Seriously, because think about this. If you want to take in the history of the Cleveland Browns, which is what I'm doing when I say a statement like that, you could make the argument that it's one of the most important wins that we've ever seen in the NFL. And that's a big statement, I get it. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, they haven't won a playoff game since 95. 95, a year after I was born. Okay? They lost a lot of their team over the week because of COVID. They lost their head coach. He had COVID, obviously, so he wasn't able to be there. He was watching from his house, from his basement, just like you and I. They couldn't walk into the building to practice for 6 days. 6 days, so an entire week before playoffs, while the Pittsburgh Steelers were supposed to be getting ready. I don't know what they were actually doing. Maybe they were not practicing either, because that's what it looked like. But the Browns definitely weren't practicing at all. They were doing Zoom calls and practicing from their houses. Imagine not being able to practice the entire week before a playoff game. This isn't week 5 of the regular season, week 6 of the regular season. This is wild card round in the NFL. And they're playing their hated rivals who absolutely own them. Own them. I mean, think about this. The last time the Cleveland Browns beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh was in 2003. In 2003, I was 9 years old, ladies and gentlemen. I was 9 years old. Okay? We're not talking about playoffs here. We're talking about the last time the Cleveland Browns, regular season, whatever, went into Pittsburgh and won was 2003. Shocking. And what do the Browns do? They drop a 28-point first quarter which, by the way, ties a playoff record for most points ever scored in a quarter. And to top it all off, they do that to the Steelers on the NBC primetime night game that capped off Wild Card Weekend. It was amazing. It was amazing. It really was. And it was and it will be one of the most memorable performances that we'll remember. It was special. I mean, to get to a point, it got to a point where Chris Collinsworth, the color analyst for NBC, who I think does an awesome job, love listening to him, very smart guy, he couldn't even verbalize what he was watching. At one point, he says, if you're new to football, I don't know if you realize how crazy this is. I mean, he really did. He really could not verbalize. He's a guy that's really well with words. What we were watching there. And it was funny because I was watching the game with my girlfriend, and she knows a little bit about football, but not much. She'll watch the games with me, ask some questions here and there, but usually, she'll be studying or paying attention to something else while the game's on. But she was watching it with me, and she even goes, wow, this is like a really big shock, right? Yes, it's huge. It's huge. Everyone knows the history of the Cleveland Browns, the heartbreak, the miserable years. And this team put all of that behind them and went out and played one hell of a playoff game. And now look at the day. Look at the end of the day, okay? They were gifted with a bunch of points. We get that, right? Because of the lackluster and mediocre play by the Steelers to begin the game. But you know what? The Browns took advantage of it. And that is what good teams do. Because I've heard all these people saying, yeah, look, the Browns won, but the Steelers, they pretty much gave it to them. And the Steelers messed up. The Steelers messed up a lot. But good teams take advantage when bad teams or good teams that are having a bad day are messing up. And that's what the Browns did. Look, if their opponent isn't playing well, good teams come out and they leave no doubt. They take advantage of it. And to do that without their head coach, who was my vote of Coach of the Year, by the way, Kevin Stefanski did a great job this season. That's how you know the Browns are a good football team. And they wanted it more. It's just plain and simple. They wanted it more. I give the Browns credit. I give the Browns a lot of credit, okay? Because it's not easy to just fall out of the football, fall on the football in the end zone. That first play of the game when the Mike Pouncey terrible snap over Big Ben's head. It's still hard to fall on the football, all right? It's not easy to get interception on the next series and that quickly get the Steelers in a 14-point deficit against a team that has just absolutely had your number for the last 20 years almost. They have beaten you 17 straight games at Heinz Field. 17 straight games. And look, I know this is the past and different players were involved in those games and all of that, but that still means something. That is still something that is in the back of their heads. And not to mention the Steelers beat the Browns by like 30 earlier this season in Pittsburgh too. So even if you're fighting a nonsense narrative, you're still fighting that narrative. It's not easy to do those things, but they did it. But the way they started the game is not what impressed me the most. What impressed me the most was the way the Browns were able to close out the game. Clearly, the Steelers came out with zero urgency. Clearly, they came out like they thought this would be an easy win. And that's on Mike Tomlin, which we are going to get into this more in a second. But as the game went on, the Steelers began to roll. Their offense was moving the ball. They were scoring touchdowns. Their defense was getting stops. And at one point, it was an 11 or 12-point game. Third quarter, 11 or 12-point game. After being down 28 points in the first quarter, the Steelers came all the way back to bring it to within 11. That is when the Browns easily could have fell back into that narrative. Fell back into that, oh, this is the same old Browns. And they could have choked that lead away, but they didn't. They were able to finish. They were able to put together long, drawn-out drives that ended with touchdowns, that ended with crucial points. That was the most impressive part to me. I know a lot of people are going to point to the start of the game, and that was great. They took advantage of the Steelers' mistake. They put their foot on the gas, and they hit it. They went. But the fact that they were able to put their foot on the Steelers' neck and end it. End it to a team that has consecutively beat the crap out of them at home for 17 years. That is so hard to do in the National Football League. So that was what impressed me the most. Now, before we get more into the Browns, I want to talk about the Steelers here. And don't worry, Browns fans, you guys deserve all the credit, and I'm not going to be the one standing up here to take away that credit. And we're going to give you more of that credit in just a little bit, okay? But I do want to hit on the Steelers here because there is a big part of this about the Steelers. And, the way this season started out for the Browns, for the Steelers, it looked like this might be the best Steelers team we've ever seen. Remember? I'm old enough to remember that they started out 11-0. The offense was rolling. Big Ben looked healthy. He was in the MVP conversation. Their defense was a top-notch, best defense in the league. And they're 11-0, and all of a sudden Mike Tomlin was looking like the coach of the year. And everybody who had doubts about Mike Tomlin over the last 5 or 6 years was looking real dumb, by the way he had his team playing, right? We all remember that. And then they came out on Sunday night, and they had this performance where we could look at a mix of reasons of why, right? If you really want to open up the canister here, maybe it was age. Big Ben started to show his age a little bit towards the end of the season. Maybe it was the lack of the run game. Which has been completely non-existent pretty much all season long. And that is an issue, okay? You have to be able to run the ball in the National Football League. If we go back to that game, and if you guys remember, there was this third down that James Conner had during the second half when the Steelers were making this comeback. And it was 3rd and 1, I think. And James Conner didn't get it. He came up like a half of inch short. That's like situational awareness right there, okay? You have to get that first down. And by the way, if you don't, you have to go for it on 4th down. You're attempting a massive comeback right now, and you somehow have made it a real possibility to actually complete this comeback. You cannot punt that ball away, which they ended up doing, and the Browns went right down and put an end to the game pretty much by scoring a touchdown. When I saw Mike Tomlin decide not to go for it on 4th and 1, I said game over. The comeback attempt is over. So when you look at all of those things, and real quick back to the 3rd and 1, you got to get, the fact that they can't get a yard running the ball explains what has happened to this team offensively. They couldn't run the ball. They just couldn't do it. So when you look at all of those things, this team was just not ready to play in a postseason game. They weren't playing. They weren't playing like they should have. And as much as I can put it all on those things that I just mentioned, this is on Mike Tomlin as well. You have to teach and preach urgency, and it clearly was not there. Otherwise, how does a longtime veteran like Mike Pouncey, a very good center, one of the best centers in the league for a long time, and another longtime veteran, Super Bowl MVP player, Big Ben, how did they make that egregious of an error to start a football game? You just can't do that. Not in a playoff game. Not in a playoff game. And I don't care how much better you think you are compared to the other team. That is bad coaching. That's bad awareness. It's bad preparation. And before you knew it, they were out of the game before the game even started. They looked utterly not only unprepared, they lacked, and this is just my opinion, but what I was watching on Sunday night, and this is going to sound harsh, I'm going to get criticized for this, but what I was watching on Sunday night was a team that was not prepared, that was not motivated, and quite frankly, for long stretches of the game, didn't seem as if they had an issue with the fact that they were getting their asses kicked on national television. Case in point, the touchdown Kareem Hunt scored in the first quarter, where he literally got hit at the 8-yard line and dragged about 3 Steelers players from the 8-yard line into the end zone. How does that happen with grown men? That's all I had to see. And I immediately said, okay, the Steelers are in trouble because they're not ready for this. Now, as I said, you give the Steelers some credit because they went on a 16-0 run and they brought it, somewhat close. They got it to a 12-point game, and that was great. And I was thinking, okay, here we go. But that's why I then have to shift the credit back to the Browns. And that is why I was so impressed with the way the Browns handled their business. Because a previous Browns team, pick and name your year, because we've had a lot of tough and bad Browns teams. A previous Browns team finds a way to collapse because you start to get comfortable, right? You start to think, we got this, no worries at all. All you got to do is not mess up, and as soon as you know, you're going to be partying and cheering on the way home. But then as soon as you start to think that, that's when you end up losing it. And so to respond after that 16-0 run, I always say this with debates, right? All you guys that have been listening to me, you always hear me say this. I always say you need to have a couple of punches ready to go, all right? And you need to be able to take a couple of punches too without getting knocked out, right? You can't let all your good info out on the first segment of the debate because then you have nothing to come back with. Well, the Browns were able to take the Steelers' punch and come back with their knockout punch. That 40-yard run by Nick Chubb, Baker stayed poised, Jarvis Landry came up with big catches, they stayed calm, they stuck to their game plan, and they won the game. They won the game. We have to remember, this is a team with really zero collective playoff experience. Coming in on the road to a building that they have not won in since 2003. And to be that prepared to play, given the circumstances that we all know, that led up to the game, the COVID issues, not having their coach, all that, not having their best quarterback, Denzel Ward, all that stuff. They were able to jump out to a 28-0 lead and then to also have that resilience to make sure you take it on the chin a couple of times, let the other team rip off a 16-0 run, and again, collectively not have the playoff experience to lean on past playoff experience, but to be able to still navigate the emotions that set in when you feel your lead is slipping away, which it was. And that was super impressive. Those are two very different set of emotions, and they handled them both perfect. Perfect. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to hit on a couple of more points here about Pittsburgh. What is the bottom line about Pittsburgh? Let's send it, seal it, end it. The season is over. What went wrong? Who is most to blame with that Sunday night performance? Then we're going to get into the Eagles and Doug Pederson. Lots to say on that. Don't go anywhere. I promise you guys are going to want to hear what I have to say. We'll be right back after this.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the GSMC Football Podcast. Happy Tuesday, whenever you are listening to this, however and wherever. We thank you so much for being a part of our day. Really, really appreciate it. It's going to be an awesome week, guys. I mean, so much going on. If you're a sports fan, if you're just a football fan, awesome week for football. Why? Because we got the divisional round this weekend, and then all week we're just going to be hearing about news of who's hiring who. Hopefully the first domino will fall. I'm hearing that the Jaguars and Urban Meyer should come to a deal by Wednesday or Thursday. I know that the New York Jets really, really like Robert Saleh. I heard that a lot of people in that Jets building do not want to let him leave the building. Kind of like a couple years ago, they hired Cliff Kingsbury. They let him leave the building. He went to Arizona. He interviewed so well with Arizona. Arizona said, we're not letting you leave the building. We're hiring you right now. They don't want that same thing to happen. Will they be able to come up with a deal and hire Robert Saleh? Is that the best fit for Jets fans? Jets fans, let me know at Kayvon_sports. Do you guys like the idea of Robert Saleh as your next head coach? A very fiery guy. Had a great defense over with the 49ers. Well-respected guy around the league. His players love him. His players go to bat for him. And a passionate, really a guy on the sidelines that you'll just see really pumped up, chest bumping with his players, having some fun with his players. But is he the right guy for your team? Because remember, what are you going to do with Sam Darnold? Are you still trying to hold out hope that you can turn Sam Darnold around? And now, there is one thing that everyone is rumoring, which is good news. It is reported that if Robert Saleh gets a head coaching job, he's going to bring on the 49ers run game coordinator, Mike McDaniels, and either both of them or one of them, the 49ers offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, which is Matt LaFleur's little brother, okay? Both of those guys, they were coaches in the Falcons organization when Kyle Shanahan was our head coach. Both of those guys are up-and-coming stars on the offensive side of the ball. So if Saleh brings those guys with him, that is really good for Sam Darnold or whoever you guys bring in on offense. That's a major plus. The one thing I'd be concerned about is the Jets don't have the talent on defense like the 49ers did. We saw this year when Nick Bosa got injured, when a couple of those Richard Sherman got injured, when a couple of those big pieces got injured, that defense took a big hit. Now, they had a lot of injuries, so that's not as much on Saleh, but we'll have to see how the Jets navigate that. So that's some big news. Urban Meyer looks like he's going to take the job with the Jaguars. Most likely, it's either Jaguars or no one else from what all these insiders are reporting. The Falcons, they're still up in the air. I hear that they really love Terry Fontenot, who has been the assistant general manager over in New Orleans for the last decade almost, and I heard that he would like to pair himself with Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator of the Panthers. Also, he was the offensive/QB coach for the LSU Tigers 2 years ago when they had that historic season with Joe Burrow. So those are some big names. Arthur Smith, the Titans offensive coordinator, is a very hot commodity. A lot of teams around the league. He is interviewing with every single team. Every single team that has an opening for a head coach is interviewing Arthur Smith. He kind of seems like the golden boy of this year's coaching round. We'll see who hires him. I know the Falcons really like him as well. So we'll see what happens from there. In just a little bit, I'm also going to have a take on the Falcons because a lot of Falcons fans are freaking out with what I've said about what the Falcons should do with their number 4 overall draft pick. And I need to clear some things up here because sometimes, and I'm this way too as a fan, you can get a little delusional and not understand what I'm saying and not look at the actual point instead of just looking at the headline. So I'll get into that in just a little bit. But again, a lot going on this week. My Carolina Hurricanes opening night NHL starting on Wednesday. Can't wait for that. Big hockey fan over here. Divisional round for the playoffs. Coming down to the final 8 teams left. So 4 games on each 2 games on each Saturday, Sunday, so 8 teams left. before we get to the divisional round where there are 4 teams left. So great stuff going on. Again, we'll see what happens with the hiring of coaches and GMs. And then again, Alabama with the historic season. Devontae Smith, receiver, Heisman Trophy winner, just absolutely balls out. Looks like a superstar wide receiver. In my opinion, has the best wide receiver season ever in the history of college football. This year, he had the best wide receiver position season ever in the history of football. He was unguardable. He was unguardable. They had a whole SEC schedule. They played Notre Dame. They played Ohio State. I really don't know what else to say other than it was extremely impressive. And Steve Sarkisian deserves a lot of credit for the way he schemed up and made Devontae Smith so open. Mac Jones, the quarterback, had a lot to do with the way how accurate he was. And now Sark is heading over to be the head coach of the Texas Longhorns. As Falcons fans, Sark was the offensive coordinator for us for a while. He did a great job. I think he got an unfair shake when they fired him. But I like the hire with Texas. I think he's going to do a good job and hopefully finally be someone to turn around that program. But back to what we were saying here, and again, in just a little bit, a couple minutes here, we're going to get into the Doug Pederson, Philadelphia Eagles situation, why they fired him, is he the most to blame, and what else should happen with this Eagles organization moving forward. Now, I want to finish up here talking about that the historic and remarkable win by the Cleveland Browns against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who frankly just didn't show up. They looked like they didn't care for a long period of time. They thought they were the better team, and they showed up like it was going to be an easy win, and that didn't happen. Now, there is some. Now we do. It is fair to say this. Okay, remember, they did have a lot of injuries on the defensive side of the ball. The Steelers I'm talking about here. All right, they had 2 huge injuries on the defensive side of the ball with their linebackers Devin Bush and Bud Dupree. Tore ACLs, were out for the season. It's really hard to overcome 2 star-studded players getting hurt like that. It really is. That's just, you can't do that. So things did start to go downhill from there. Now, it was more of an offensive thing than a defense, but still, that is something that needs to be pointed out, okay? And it wasn't just Sunday night. This team has been struggling. You know, you look back at that Washington game, Big Ben threw the ball 53 times. The next game against Buffalo, Big Ben threw it almost 40 times, only ran it 14 times. The inability to get some sort of balance, the inability to get any type of balance on offense, and I mean nothing. All right, Big Ben threw the ball 60 times on Sunday night in a playoff game. 60 times, ladies and gentlemen, for an old quarterback like Big Ben. Only 16 out of the 84 plays did they run the ball. That is an awful ratio. That is a predictable ratio. And you're simply not winning football games that way in the National Football League. And look, Mike Tomlin does not deserve all of the blame, okay? But he does deserve a big portion of it. So, beginning of the fourth quarter, it would take your brains back to the game Sunday night. It's 4th and 1. It's 4th and 1, and the Steelers are about right at the 50-yard line. And they punt the ball back to the Browns. This was the drive where they had ripped off 16 consecutive points. It's 4th down. You're down 12 points. It's the start of the fourth quarter, and you have to keep the offense on the field there. You have to. The momentum is all with you now. You have to keep that momentum rolling. Sports is a game of momentum. I say this all the time. And when you have that momentum, you have to ride it as long as it will take you. You have to. If you convert that 4th down and eventually go down and score, it's a 1-possession ball game, ladies and gentlemen. It's a horrendous decision to punt the ball right there. And it came back and bit them in the butt for it. It did. And to me, the fact that they went on that 16-0 run once they got going, to me it told me that they thought they were better. Just hear me out here. That might sound a little crazy. They thought they were better from the very beginning. That's why there wasn't that urgency. They thought they were the better team, and maybe they are the better team. but they thought they were the better team on the field. And when you make a decision like that in your head, when you're blindly assuming that, yes, you are a better team, and yes, you have the Browns' number, which is correct, they did have the Browns' number, and the Browns don't have their entire team or their head coach, so you already are going into this saying, okay, even when they have all those guys, we beat the crap out of them. Now they don't have these guys? This should be easy. So you thought you were easily the better team. And when you think that way in sports, you're in trouble. You're in a lot of trouble. And if I'm Mike Tomlin, you have to go for that on fourth down because you weren't better than the Browns on Sunday. So now you have to play desperation football. And desperation football tells you to go for that on fourth down, especially since your defense has not been playing very great. And look, to quote The Great Miracle Speech, which is an amazing movie. I love that movie, all right? And it's an all-time speech. All-time speech. But if the Steelers would play the Browns 10 times, there's a good chance they win 8 or 9 of them. Right? That's that famous quote. In my opinion, I mean, they almost beat them with Mason Rudolph the week before. They beat them by 30 earlier in the season. And the Steelers thought the same way. And that's what got them in trouble going into this game. To me, I thought the Steelers were the better team. But you can never go into a game, especially a playoff game, saying we're the better team, and I felt that the Steelers did that. Even when they were down by 20-something, and that's why you didn't see like this urgency or this care. Like, all right, we're going to come back, and eventually they got close, but that one decision to punt the ball, you got to risk that one. You have to risk that one. That is 100 times out of 100, you must go for it there. Yeah, Tomlin, that was a monster gaffe by Tomlin. It was an absolute mistake. There's nobody that can convince me otherwise. And again, I like Mike Tomlin as a coach. I really do like Mike Tomlin. He's a great coach. It's been communicated on this podcast many times. But we are now starting to see too many instances of either a lack of being buttoned up or looseness or a combination of both. That kind of creeps into their spirit. And, you know, whether it's Juju doing the stupid dance on the logo, and then Tomlin warned you to stop dancing, and then he goes out and says, the Browns are still the Browns. And in other words, we're the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they're the Cleveland Browns. We're going to dominate you like we always do. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing here, but that's what he was implying. He didn't learn his lesson. And, you know, to have that latitude as a player speaks to that, the lack of discipline and just a lack of awareness, in all honesty. And it starts to seem like that is something that is missing from the Steelers. And I know you can mainly put that on Juju, but there have been other instances like that with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and even Big Ben at times. And look, it's no secret. It's no secret at this point. It's a widely known sentiment that Mike Tomlin's football teams fall into these trap games all the time, where they should beat a team pretty handily, and they end up losing it or squeaking by. That's a problem. And really quickly on Juju Smith-Schuster here, look, he can say that stuff. I get it. You can't say that before a playoff game. And I know it's the NFL and these players should already be motivated enough and all that, but why add fuel to the fire? Why say something like that before the game? Wait till it's over. Go out there, beat them, then talk all the trash you want. And if you're going to say something before the game, you better not come out and play like hot garbage and lay an egg. And not you in particular, but your team did. And what happens from here in terms of Juju? When you start to do something like this multiple times, which he has this season, and you're not playing at that high of a level, which he hasn't, remember, only 100-yard receiving game this year, well, that starts to creep into the front office and the owner, and it starts to bring up questions. Do we really want to bring Juju back when he becomes a free agent? Is he really worth signing him to that extension? These are questions asked, and they will be asked about Juju. And that's why you just go play the freaking game. Don't be disrespectful. Just play the game. And you know what? If you do want to be disrespectful, do it on the field. Do it with your play. Do it with your trash talk on the field. Don't do it to the media. Don't make it a headline that the other team will post in their locker room. It's just dumb. It's nonsense. And now the Steelers are going to have a lot of questions that they need to answer, starting with what happened, how did an 11-0 team turn into this, and I know they were already reeling towards the end of the season, but this really ended the worst possible way for them. You lose at home to your rival, you come out completely flat and disengaged, and to top it all off, the team that beat you didn't even have their head coach, their best cornerback in Denzel Ward, and couldn't even get into the building to practice all last week before a playoff game. That's miserable. That is a miserable way to end your season. And now you go into the offseason, and you have a lot of question marks to fill. Big Ben, he's under contract for one more year. Is that what you want to do? Do you want to give him one more season? Your offensive line, it's old. Mike Pouncey, he's older. They couldn't open up a run game for you. James Conner, he's a free agent. Did James Conner play his last game as a Steeler? Juju Smith-Schuster, he's a free agent. Did Juju play his last game as a Steeler? Why would they bring Juju back? They've got Deontay Johnson. They've got Chase Claypool. They've got Eric Ebron. They've got these James Washington. Do they really need Juju? These are questions that this front office and Mike Tomlin are going to have to answer. And then Mike Tomlin, he's going to have to answer some questions as well too. What happened? Why was your team not prepared? Why was the team that didn't have their head coach, the team that didn't get to practice or be together all week, why were they way more prepared? Why were they way more energized? Why were they way more enthusiastic? Why were they able to win that football game in your house? These are questions, if I'm the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, that I want serious answers to. Big Ben, I want to talk to Big Ben. Do you feel like you want to play more? Do you feel like you can play another season? Look, in all seriousness, Big Ben had a good season towards the end of the year. Now, what happened? That's something that they need to figure out. Was that because of his old age? Was that because of his arm surgery that he had last year? Was his arm starting to wear out? I mean, he's throwing the ball 50 times every game. Shouldn't be doing that. So was it that, or was it because they weren't able to make it weren't able to take some of the heat off of him? They weren't able to run the football. It was all on him. The defense got worse, so the offense had to do more. Was that the reason? So could you come back and say, you know what, Ben, we can bring you back one more year if we can fix this run game and not have you throw the ball 50 times a game. Maybe have you throw the ball 25, 20, 30 times a game. How's that? I think Big Ben wants to come back. I don't think he wants to end his career on that note. So I think he's going to come back. He still has a big cap hit for next year. One more year, then he's gone. Now, the Steelers, they got to start thinking for the future, though. Whether that's drafting a quarterback this year to learn from Big Ben or bringing in a free agent. Because right now, Mason Rudolph, he's not the answer. So a lot of questions here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see what happens. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon Izami. Big congrats to the Cleveland Browns, though. They earned this. Yes, the Steelers were awful, but the Browns, you did what you were supposed to do. You played real meaningful football. You showed up even when the cards were completely stacked against you. And that is impressive. That is very impressive. Baker, congratulations. You put some of the naysayers behind you. Now keep it rolling. Keep it rolling. Can you go into the big bad Kansas City Chiefs and do it again? We'll have to see. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Doug Pederson out as the Philadelphia Eagles head coach 3 years after winning a Super Bowl. What? How did we get to this point? My, oh my. We'll be right back after this.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Let's go! Segment number 3, quarter number 3. How we doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon Izami, as always, coming at you guys with exciting content, news, updates, everything we can talk about, NFL, sports, all of it. You name it, we'll talk about it. Twitter is at Kayvon_sports, at Kayvon_sports. Know you guys, a lot of you Saints fans out there, happy to get by. And look, I'm not trying to hate. I said get by because let's be honest there, if the Chicago Bears just had a little bit of offense, I mean just the tiniest bit of offense, Chicago might win that game. The Saints offense looked really bad. Their defense looked fantastic. Can you guys beat Tampa Bay and Tom Brady 3 times in a row? Tampa Bay fans, Buck fans, where you at? Let me hear you, Buck fans. Let me hear you. I haven't heard a lot of you lately. Now, I know there's a lot of you out there. And I know you guys are excited because your team's starting to roll. But I don't think you guys wanted this matchup. You didn't. Because this matchup is very bad for the Bucks and very good for the Saints. Now, you're going to say, Kayvon, why is that? Why? I mean, they got Tom Brady. Antonio Brown's hitting their stride. Mike Evans looking like one of the best receivers in the league. You got Chris Godwin, who Brady just said that he has some of the best hands he's ever seen and played with. Woo, that's a big statement. Gronk, Cameron Braid. I mean, where can you go wrong with this team? How can this Saints team that can barely move the ball down the field on Chicago, how can they be a bad matchup for the Bucs? Well, this is why. Sean Payton will outcoach Bruce Arians. Sean Payton has outcoached Bruce Arians both of the games this year. Sean Payton knows the way to beat Tom Brady, and what Sean Payton did is he implemented that way right into Brady's heart both times this season. And what is that? Ladies and gentlemen, you know, you got to get pressure on Tom Brady without bringing the blitz. If your front four can pressure your front four, your front six, whatever, if you guys can pressure Brady, if you can beat the Bucs offensive line, make Brady uncomfortable, make him have to get the ball out of his hand much quicker than he wants to, that's how you beat Tom Brady. And that's what the Saints have done both times they played the Bucs. And that's why it was a complete mismatch and a complete beatdown. Now, I will say this. The first time was Brady's first game. It was week 1. It was Brady's first game as a Buccaneer. We can throw that one out the window. The second time was very disappointing because Bruce Arians wasn't ready for it. This offensive line wasn't ready for it. This offensive line for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is going to be the key to if they win or if they don't. All right. Now, I know a lot of people like the Saints because of what happened the first 2 games. They think that their defense is better, and they're rolling with the defense. The Saints' defense is better. There is no doubt about that. But can the Saints' offense put up any points? Seriously. And I know that sounds crazy when you think you got Drew Brees under center, you got Alvin Kamara, you have Michael Thomas, you have Emmanuel Sanders. Let me tell you guys something. And Todd Bowles knows this. Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he's a smart guy. He knows this. The way to beat the New Orleans Saints is by stopping Alvin Kamara. If you look at the Bears game, the Bears did that. The Bears were able to hold Alvin Kamara in check for majority of that game. And that's why it was a 10-3 game going into the fourth quarter, right? I mean, it was a 10-3, it was 14-3 going into the fourth quarter. And remember, the Bears dropped a wide open touchdown pass. Javon Wims in the end zone. If he catches that, it's a 10-10 ball game. The Bears are leading 10-7 going into halftime, right? So, but overall, the Bears held Alvin Kamara in check. They did for most of the game. Now, he ended up having 23 carries, 99 yards, and a touchdown, but that's not really a big stat line for Kamara, and he got most of those yards towards the end. They held him to only 2 catches. That's really good. Alvin Kamara, who's a check down machine, just check the ball down to him and he can do his thing from there. Holding him only to 2 catches. If the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can do what the Chicago Bears did to the Saints on defense, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are winning this game. And I don't care how good that Saints defense is, because Tampa Bay will eventually score some points. Now, if the Saints keep bringing the pressure and keep loading it up on Tampa, and Brady can't have time to set back and throw and dissect the pocket like a surgeon that he is when he has time, then they're not going to score many points. But their offense is too talented, Tom Brady is too skilled, and those receivers are way too good for them to stay in check all game. They will eventually break out, even if it's just one quick long play, one slant pass that goes to the house. Something like that will happen where the Bucs will be able to score, 14, 21 points, all right? Can the Saints score that much if the Bucs defense keeps them in check? Now, the Bucs defense has not been very good as of late. It hasn't. It's slowed down. It was really good to start the game. Their cornerbacks aren't playing very good. They're young, and that front right there, they haven't been getting as much pressure as they would like with Jason Pierre-Paul, Ndamukong Suh, Shaquille Barrett. Now, they do get their star-studded young linebacker Devin White out of LSU back. He wasn't there against Washington, and that was a big difference. They do get him back, which will be huge. So really, I think the 2 keys to this game, the key for the Saints, make Brady uncomfortable. Make Brady uncomfortable and dominate that Bucs O-line. If you can do that, you're on your way to winning. The key for the Bucs, keep Alvin Kamara in check. I don't care. Let Michael Thomas go for 200 yards. Let him go for 200 yards. Do not let Alvin Kamara break out, because I promise you, if Alvin Kamara breaks out, you have no shot. You have no shot. That, to me, is the most entertaining game of the weekend. I think another really entertaining game is the Green Bay Packers and the Los Angeles Rams. That's the first game on the docket. That's the Saturday afternoon game, 4 o'clock kickoff. You've got an outstanding high-scoring offense in the Packers against the best, most vaunted defense in the league in the Rams. That's going to be so interesting to me. Now, it's going to be cold. Can the Rams, they're from Los Angeles, are the Rams going to be able to travel? Are they going to be able to play in that cold weather? Usually, defense travels well in the playoffs. Whether it's cold or warm, they show up. Now, the key to this game is the best player in all of football, the best defensive player by far in all of football might not be 100%. That's Aaron Donald. Now, he said he's going to play. He said he's going to go, but he got a little banged up in Seattle, and he never came back in the game, in that Seattle game. Will he be able to go? Will he be able to step up and play a Aaron Donald type game? Or is he just going out there as a decoy where he'll still play, but he's not going to be, it's more going to be going through the motions. He's not going to be able to give off the full Aaron Donald, because if Aaron Donald can't play to his best abilities, I don't think the Rams have any chance of winning this game. Now, offensively, Sean McVay has come out and said that he still doesn't know who's going to be starting. Is it going to be John Wolford, who, remember, he started last game, he got hurt. Jared Goff recently had finger surgery. He broke his finger. I think it was his thumb. So he had to come in and replace John Wolford. Now, he didn't do anything special, but the main thing is he didn't do anything bad. He didn't turn the football over, and that's the key there. If Jared Goff is turning the football over, this defense can be as good as the 1985 Chicago Bears team. Doesn't matter. They're still not winning the Super Bowl. Or they're still not winning this game because the turnovers are going to kill them. So Jared Goff has to just play QB managed football if he plays. Now, I believe Jared Goff is going to be the starter. I believe Sean McVay just doesn't want to announce that, but I think that Jared Goff is going to be the starter. I do think that Sean McVay might want to lean on John Wolford because he can run more, but I think in this situation, in that environment of Green Bay, I think he's going to go with the more experienced quarterback in Jared Goff. The key for the Rams here is, can they get Cam Akers to do what he did last game? Last game, Cam Akers had a show. I mean, he put on a show. He went for 28 carries, 131 yards, and 1 touchdown running the football. He ran all over that Seahawks defense. Can he do something like that again? Because if he can run on that Packers defense, who, by the way, has done a really good job stopping the run this year. If you guys remember, that was their Achilles heel last year. Last year it was, man, the Packers, they're 13-3, but they just don't feel like 13-3 because they can't stop the run. And then what happens? They get to the NFC Championship game, and Kyle Shanahan and his amazing scheme runs all over night and day on the Green Bay Packers. So what do? All offseason, they try and shore up that defensive line. They try and make sure that they don't allow that to happen. Well, they've done a really good job. They stopped Derrick Henry a couple weeks ago on Sunday Night Football. They held him to under 100 yards. They've held David Montgomery the week after that, who was one of the hottest running backs in the league. They held him in check. So they've been able to hold opposing team run games in check. Can they do that to this Rams team? Because remember, the Rams and Sean McVay, his offensive system is very similar to Kyle Shanahan's. It's run, play action, pass. And he's really good at using his O-line to do different concepts, pull the guards, all that stuff to create the run, to create big holes for his running back. So will Green Bay have problems against that like they did last year? I think that this is going to be a low-scoring game to an extent. I think that the Rams are live. I think that they have a real shot to win it. I don't know if they will, but I do like the Rams to cover the 7-point spread. I really do. I just think that in the playoffs, defense is so important. And when you have a defense like the Rams have, it's hard not to back them with the points. I don't know if they'll win. I think Aaron Rodgers is on a mission. I think Devontae Adams is playing so well. Aaron Jones, all that. Matt LaFleur is doing a great job as a coach. I think that the Packers should squeak by, but this is going to be a very tough matchup for the Green Bay Packers. Now, this other game that I'm arguably the game I'm most excited for. Now, I'm really excited for that Tampa Bay game. I'm really excited for the Packers game. All these games are going to be fun, but this Saturday night NBC game, the Baltimore Ravens against the Buffalo Bills. This game is going to be so fun. Now, right now, there is prediction of snow. If there's snow, it might change some things. But if the weather clears up, I think Baltimore has a real shot to win this game. I really do. I think either way, it's going to be a back-and-forth game. I think it's going to be a shootout. I think it's going to be so fun with two electric quarterbacks playing their butts off now that they finally have their first, and I shouldn't say finally because they're both still so young, but now that they have their first playoff wins, both of them, the Bills, they didn't play good football last week. Really, they did everything they could to let the Colts win that game. Luckily for them, the Colts did everything they could to lose that game. I mean, they had over 400 yards of offense, and they couldn't win. They got over the Bills' 50-yard line on almost every single drive, and they still only put up 24 points. Like, the Colts should have won that football game. If the Bills play anywhere near like they did in that game, sayonara, goodbye, pack your bags. You're not winning. You're not beating the Ravens. But I don't think they will, because I think they got that playoff win off their back. They were nervous. That was their dud of the postseason. Now I think they're playing with house money. Even though they're the favorites, even though they're the 2 seed, even though they had the better season, I still think they feel like, we're at home. We got to win. We accomplished something for our fans. Even if we lose here, even if our season ends this weekend, we still can say we finally won a playoff game at home for our fans. Check, right? We finally won the AFC East. Check, right? So that's good. Now, on the Ravens side of things, they also got a monkey off their back. Lamar Jackson, arguably been the best, second best, third best quarterback in the league over the last 2 years. Won the MVP unanimously last year, but hasn't been able to win a playoff game. What happens? Saturday, they win. Lamar gets that monkey off his back, but this is important, ladies and gentlemen. It's not that they just won the football game. It's how they won the football game. They won the football game with playing Lamar Jackson's style. That is so important, ladies and gentlemen. And you say, why, Kayvon? Why is that so important? This is what Lamar always does. It's important because of this. All of the naysayers, all of the haters, all of the people that doubted Lamar Jackson over and over said he's a great player. He's an athlete. But he's not a quarterback in the NFL that's going to win big playoff games. Why? Because in the NFL, you're going to need to be able to throw the ball. You're not going to be able to run around and win that way. The Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson won that way on Saturday. They beat the on Sunday. They beat the Buffalo Bills because Lamar Jackson played that way. Because Lamar Jackson put the team on his back and said, enough with the games. Watch me dazzle and razzle and run all over this Titans defense. And even more importantly, they crushed that narrative, and they crushed the narrative that if they get down in the postseason, they can't come back. They got down 10-0 early. And I'm not going to lie, you, me, everyone was thinking it. Here we go. Here we go again. They're down early. Lamar Jackson's going to have to throw the ball, get them back in this game. Another playoff loss for the Baltimore Ravens. And then Lamar Jackson put on his Lee Corso voice and said, not so fast, my friends. And he had one of the most athletic quarterback touchdown runs I've ever seen with that 48-yard touchdown run. It reminded me of the Michael Vick overtime run against the Vikings a while back, which was so impressive. Lamar Jackson crushed two narratives in one game. He crushed the narrative of his style of football can't win football games, and he crushed the narrative that if this team gets down, they can't come back unless Lamar Jackson throws the ball all over the place. Now, they came back by running the ball all over the place. Now, that doesn't mean they can't do that. They're going to be able to do that all the way to the Super Bowl. All right, they're going to play teams with better defenses. Luckily for them, the Buffalo Bills' biggest weakness you guessed it, ladies and gentlemen, is their run game. They let Jonathan Taylor, the Colts running back, run all over them. And yes, the Colts have a good running game. It's nothing compared to what this Ravens running game is. This Ravens running game with J.K. Dobbins and Lamar and Gus Edwards will run all over the Buffalo Bills. They will. The only thing is, they don't want to get too far down in this game, all right? You get down 10-0 to the Titans. They were able to come back because, yes, the Titans' offense is good, but they rely on the run a lot. So if you stop the run, you can get some stops, you can get the ball back, come back. This Bills offense, if they get up with Josh Allen and he's playing well, they can end it. They can score like that. I think this game is going to be fascinating. I think there's going to be so many points, and I think we're seriously going to see a young superstar quarterback versus a young superstar quarterback showdown. I really think both of these quarterbacks, Lamar and Josh Allen, are going to put on serious performance for the fans and for their teams on Saturday night, and I can't wait for it. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. Hope everyone's having a great time. Hope everyone's enjoying the show. One segment left. We're going to kick off the start of segment 4 with the Eagles talking Doug Pederson. I know I've been teasing it. It's the biggest segment here. We're going to talk about it right after this. I promise we'll bring it out right after this. Here we go. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
We are here, segment number 4, ladies and gentlemen. Segment number 4, quarter number 4. Hope everyone's enjoying the show. Thank you for making us a little bit a part of your day. We really do appreciate it. So much news going on in the NFL world right now. So much news going on in the sports world. James Harden complaining. James Harden really just unhappy with his situation. Where the Rockets have given Harden everything, and now he wants a trade. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? He is going to get a trade because that's how the NBA works. The NHL, my Carolina Hurricanes, starting to play Thursday night puck drop against the Detroit Pistons. It's going to be a great NHL season. Really can't wait. NBA's out and running, and the NFL is in the middle of a big playoff run for 8 teams left. And it's going to be 8 good teams, and it's going to be 4 really good matchups. I think every single matchup has a chance to go either way. I really do. Obviously, there's some serious favorites like the Packers and like the Kansas City Chiefs. But other than that, I mean, would anybody be shocked if the Rams won with that defense? Would anybody be that shocked if the Browns did it again? I mean, I think that would be the most shocking news for sure. I don't think the Browns will be able to do it, but I do think that they can keep it close. And then I know a lot of people are on the Saints, but the Buccaneers, the Ravens, they could easily win as well. And I'll tell you this, I think Bills fans, don't get mad at me. I think you guys are willing to play anyone, and I think you guys can beat anyone. But I think you guys were hoping that Pittsburgh won that game because I think you guys would have much rather saw Pittsburgh than Baltimore just because of your run defense. It's not very good, and it's a bad matchup against Baltimore. Now, I think Chiefs fans, on the other hand, are pretty happy because I think that they would have rather see Cleveland like they are than seeing the Ravens. So it's interesting. These are how things go. Seattle got kicked out in the first round again. They're going to have to make some changes, and we're going to have to see what happens there. They're going to have to answer some questions just like the Steelers. What happened to their offense? Why did things go so downhill throughout the season? Some big questions that they'll have to answer. Now, big news out of Philadelphia. Doug Pederson is out as head coach 3 years after winning a Super Bowl. Now, that's huge, right? And we're going to get into that in just 1 second. But I do want to say one thing about my Atlanta Falcons here. Because the other day, I came on here and I tweeted it out as well. And I said, the Atlanta Falcons with the number 4 overall pick must take a quarterback. And my goodness, did Falcons Twitter come at me. They hated me. And I'm over here like, guys, I'm one of you. Like, why are you hating on me? It hurt. It hurt. I'm a Falcons fan. So I wanted to clear things up. I am the biggest Matt Ryan supporter out there. I believe Matt Ryan is a Hall of Famer. I am the president of the Matt Ryan is a Hall of Famer club. I am, okay? If Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Famer, Matt Ryan is sure as heck a Hall of Famer, okay? I think Matt Ryan is really, and this is going to sound crazy to some, I think Matt Ryan is the Dan Marino of this era. And it's not just because he hasn't won a Super Bowl. It's because he's just he's a good football player. He puts up a lot of yards just like Dan Marino. He throws a lot of touchdowns just like Dan Marino. He's just gotten some bad breaks at times. But he did get his team to the Super Bowl. He has made the NFC Championship game a couple times. And he still has a chance to win a Super Bowl. And I think he has a chance to win a Super Bowl with Atlanta. So when I say, ladies and gentlemen, I want the Falcons to take a quarterback with the number 4 overall pick, I'm not saying that because I believe Matt Ryan is washed up. I'm not saying that because I want the Falcons to get rid of Matt Ryan. No, I'm saying that because I'm trying to be a logical fan here. I'm trying to not be a delusional fan, okay? I love Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and all these players just as much as you guys do. I probably love them more, okay? I mean, they are my team. That Matt Ryan is my guy. But when you have a top 5 pick and you're a franchise like the Atlanta Falcons, look, yes, the Atlanta Falcons have had some bad seasons as of late. But they're not a team that is constantly picking in the top 5. They're not the New York Jets. They're not the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're not the old Cleveland Browns, where these teams were always picking in the top 5. The last time the Atlanta Falcons had a top 5 pick was in 2008. You know who they took? Matt Ryan. So my point is, when you're a team that doesn't pick this high often, you have to take advantage of it. You have to get the most value for that pick. Why? Because you're most likely not going to be there ever again. Or you're most likely not going to be there for a long time. So why not, if there is a Luke Wilson on the board, if there is a Justin Fields on the board, Zach Wilson. I always get that wrong for some reason. Zach Wilson, who's a stud out of BYU. Justin Fields, who's a stud out of Ohio State. We all know Lawrence is going number 1, but we don't know if the Jets are going to take a quarterback at number 2. And if they do, most likely the Dolphins are not going to take one at number 3. So if you're sitting there at number 4, why not take one of these guys who a lot of these analysts like and let him sit under Matt Ryan for 2 years? Look, just because every freaking franchise out there that takes a quarterback in the first round starts them year 1 doesn't mean you have to. The Kansas City Chiefs didn't do it. They let Patrick Mahomes sit for an entire year, and look how that's turned out. Okay? So and Matt Ryan is a good guy. He's not going to be mad at that. He might be mad, but he's not going to cause an issue. He's not going to demand a trade. If the ownership and the front office and the team does it right, and they pull Matt Ryan aside before they take the pick, and they say, Matt Ryan, we're going to take Zach Wilson here. We're going to take Justin Fields here. And we're going to do it, but you're still our quarterback for the next 2 years. And shoot, if you keep playing good, you might be there for the next 3-4 years. But we're doing this because we're not going to pick this high again for a long time. We believe that. And we believe that we have an amazing Hall of Famer on our hands in you. And we want you to groom them. We want you to groom this quarterback so that we're able to compete now with you. And then we're also setting up our future, our franchise, to be in a good position in the future. That is the best move to do because you are setting up your franchise for the future. And that is so important, ladies and gentlemen. You do not want to be one of these teams that has a great quarterback, but once he retires, you're in the middle of quarterback hell. You don't know what to do. Look at the Saints right now. Yeah, I get it. Taysom Hill, what? Is he really a starter? Jameis Winston, who knows? Drew Brees is out next year. They don't know what they're going to do. And they have no cap space. We don't want to be in that boat, ladies and gentlemen. You have to take advantage of a pick that high when you have it. If you don't want to pick that high, then trade out. Get assets, and then don't take a quarterback. But if you are picking that high at number 4, a quarterback is the way to go, unless for some reason all 3 quarterbacks go 1, 2, and 3, and you're sitting there at 4. In that case, you take a Jamar Chase, you take a Penei Sewell, the offensive tackle out of Oregon, or you trade out. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. I am a Matt Ryan. That is my guy. I love that dude. And I think he can still play for 2, 3, 4 more years if he wants to. And I think he can play for the Falcons for that much time. But you got to think about the future, ladies and gentlemen. We want to win. We want to win now. We want to win later. We want to set our future up. We want to set our franchise up to be successful. When you have a pick that high and there's this many quarterbacks that are this good coming out of college, you got to take one. You got to take one. All right, let's move on to this Doug Pederson news. As you guys know, Philadelphia Eagles have fired Doug Pederson, head coach. All right, so everyone that has been listening to this show as of late, they know how I feel about Doug Pederson and the horrendous job he has done this season. I was on record saying the Eagles need to fire him, and that's what has ended up happening. And now, we have to be fair, okay? And we have to look at it and say, okay, what specifically went awry? And how much should be dropped at Pederson's doorstep? And then, to what should be his value now on the open market with all these job openings? Now, as much as we talk about Doug Pederson and talk about him being the person to blame, and rightfully so, again, I said this is what the Eagles needed to do. They needed to fire him. But we also can't look past Howie Roseman, who is the Eagles general manager, who is now, if he keeps his job, is going to be hiring his 3rd head coach. That is unprecedented in the NFL, ladies and gentlemen. You do not see a general manager being able to outlast 3 head coaches. Just doesn't happen. Now, let's just have a brief history here. Who is Howie Roseman? Howie Roseman was with Andy Reid back in 2010 when Andy Reid was the head coach. That's when he was hired. But he did not even have the general manager title then. He did not have any personnel authority. Andy Reid had that authority because he had been there for so long. That was all Andy Reid. After they moved on from Andy Reid, after Howie Roseman's 3rd season, they hired Chip Kelly. He was the general manager until Chip Kelly said, I want personnel decisions. And so Howie moved to the VP of football operations. Then they fired Chip Kelly, and Howie again took back over personnel decisions. And then they obviously moved on and hired Doug Pederson, and now they are firing Doug Pederson. So Howie Roseman has had personnel decisions over that entire point of the Doug Pederson era. Now, we all know what happened this year. And for those that don't, this is really, really important. And that is what they used as a 2nd-round draft pick of their 2020 draft on quarterback Jalen Hurts. And it was so confounding to everyone because you just paid your young quarterback Carson Wentz $128 million in an extension. So anyone that can imagine the dynamics of a locker room can realize this made things confounding. This made things confusing, and it never got better. And that was not just on Howie, because Doug Pederson handled everything about that situation in a disastrous way. But we will get more into that in a minute. Taking Jalen Hurts in the second round wasn't even the most egregious move that Howie made, though. In the 2020 draft, the even more confounding move was when in the first round he drafted wide receiver Jalen Reagor instead of Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson was the clear better player in college, the more talented player, the more productive player. Any type of metric, any type of stat, any type of video you looked at, it said Justin Jefferson was and is the better player. There was absolutely zero reason to not take Jefferson. And as we all know, Jefferson went on to have an all-time historic rookie season. And Reagor didn't really do anything. So Howie has a lot of blame here as well. A lot. And I don't know how he's keeping his job. I really don't. Now, to move off of Howie Roseman and then back to Doug Pederson. He never managed this the right way. From day one, Doug Pederson never managed any of this the right way this season. And you could see it from the beginning of the season when there were questions about, well, since you guys used a second-round draft pick on Jalen Hurts, how are you going to use him? He would never answer. He would never give a proper answer. He just kind of let it sit in limbo. And I get it. It was a pandemic season, training camp, OTAs, all that stuff. It was all disjointed and jacked up. But you had to have some sort of plan, right? And if there wasn't a plan, that means that you weren't on the same page as your general manager who made that draft pick. And so as the season went on, it got worse and worse and worse because the guy you paid $128 million to started playing really poorly. He clearly wasn't on the same page as his head coach. Doug Pederson then benches Carson Wentz at some point, and the whole time, Doug Pederson just kind of didn't answer the question. He never had real answers. He made things worse by how he handled the media. And you can even put the media in the back burner here. Put the media behind us, okay? What about his team? His team had no idea what was going on. When you stop and look back at it, there really isn't a question on why they underperformed this season. It's because it was chaos. It was chaos all over, and especially within the front office and the coaching staff. And when there is chaos in those areas, it's really hard to perform well in the NFL. When there is chaos up top, it always trickles down. Just like any other ordinary business. If there's chaos with your CEO and president, that is going to trickle down to the everyday employees. Well, that goes the same for NFL franchises. When there is disconnect up top, it always trickles down to the field as well. And the fact that they are in the worst division in football, especially this year, and you could really argue last year as well, and they still couldn't distinguish themselves, it's weird because when you win a Super Bowl, you know you've gotta dole out the proper props. You've got to, right? You don't just stumble your way into a Super Bowl win. You don't. You just don't backdoor your way into a Super Bowl win. Not in the NFL, all right? Not in the NFL. That just doesn't happen. You might circumstantially, if the conference is really down and the team you're playing in the division round, their star players are hurt or something, or they get hurt during the game, like there could be circumstances on how you can maybe stumble into the Super Bowl game, but you aren't winning the Super Bowl, especially when you're playing a Patriots team, if you're not doing some stuff right, you know? So we have to make sure that we give him a lot of props there. But there is no doubt, once you get past that now, you got to look at the fact you had a really good offensive coordinator on your staff that year you won the Super Bowl in Frank Reich. How do we know? Because look what Frank Reich has done in Indy. He has done a tremendous job, and that offense is one of the best in the league. And it's also no coincidence that since Frank Reich has left, Carson Wentz hasn't been as sharp. And now you have had Carson Wentz go from a top 5 quarterback basically someone who's going to win the MVP to literally and statistically the worst quarterback in football. That's number one. All right. Number two, how could that happen? When you say that out loud, it's crazy, right? So under your watch, without the assistance of Frank Wright, you went from that amazing, that almost everybody was jealous of outside of 2 or 3 teams, to the guy is a train wreck and is one of the worst quarterbacks in football right now. You may have lost the locker room. I know we've heard conflicting reports, but what went down, he certainly didn't gain respect around the league, that's for sure. And the young quarterback, Jalen Hurts, whether you wanted him or you didn't, the way you failed to empower him after so many good moments, you were so weak in asserting any sort of confidence towards him, that he deserves to be fired. When you put all that together, he deserves to be fired. Like I said, I've said this for 2 weeks now, that he deserves to be maybe more, but he deserves to be fired is what I said. But the question now becomes, well, there's 2 questions. What should Philly do? And how appealing is Doug Pederson on the open market for the teams that need head coaches right now? I think there was a mistake that was made. It's simple. It's a simple one, but it's a very pertinent one when you think about quarterbacks and when your team is built around your quarterback. Once you pay a guy, this is the same problem that the Houston Texans are going to have because they paid Deshaun Watson so much money. The team is now built around the quarterback. The same thing with Kansas City. Ultimately will be the same way with Josh Allen once he gets paid by the Bills. Once you pay the quarterback, you have to build around that quarterback. All right? But then you go and you undermine him. So they paid Carson Wentz. They said, hey, we're going to pay you the big bucks because we believe in you, and we're going to get rid of Nick Foles, and we're going to build our team around you moving forward. But then, not even a full season after that, you go and undermine him by drafting a really good college player in Jalen Hurts. Let's remember, they didn't draft some scrub in the second round, guys. They drafted a Heisman Trophy finalist. They drafted a guy that lost a total of 4 games in college. So you first do that, and then you overcoach Wentz. You bring in Marty Morningway, and then Rick Scarangello, who for the Eagles, who became an offensive assistant. In addition to his quarterback coach, in addition to Doug Pederson, who was the de facto offensive coordinator and head coach. There's too many voices in Carson Wentz's head, and you wonder why he faltered so much. And so that's mismanagement right there, ladies and gentlemen. That's mismanagement. That's mismanagement by the front office. That's mismanagement by the head coach. It's all mismanagement. It's hiring for the sake of hiring. And so I think that's a lesson that Doug Pederson learned. And he'll know not to do it again. Can he immediately rebound to become a head coach again right now? I don't know. I'm going to say no. And I don't think he should. And I mean right now. I mean this year. I'm not talking about in the future. He definitely can rebound and become a head coach in the future. But I'm talking about right now. Don't take a break. That would be wrong. Because I think there's a lot of baggage right now hanging around Doug Pederson. And we've had this conversation before. But sometimes you just need to take a year off. And this, to me, it feels like Doug Pederson is the kind of coach right now who also probably didn't expect this year to go as awry as it did. And there's no way he has the answers right now. And so to just try to do it again someplace else and put this behind you so quickly is not the best choice. Think about it. Remember Rex Ryan when he went straight over to Buffalo after getting fired by the Jets? Or Adam Gase going straight from Miami to the Jets? Neither of those situations worked out well at all. And I'm not saying Pederson is either of those guys, but with so much going on right now, and the way his players felt, and the way the season ended, and the way Carson Wentz has just taken a huge decline, it just feels like his best move is to take a year off, because he will get a job again. He is a Super Bowl winning coach, but sometimes taking the first job right away just isn't the best bet. You know, when you look at Adam Gase, he went from Miami straight to the Jets. He never took a year off. But there were things that Gase needed to fix for what happened in Miami. He gets a job immediately, so there's no time for self-awareness. There's no looking in the mirror. There's no, moment of clarity where you say maybe to yourself, but, you at least recognize that maybe I've got to change a few things about myself to try and make myself more appealing for my next employer. That never happened for Gase. That stuff needs to happen when things go so wrong as they did in Philadelphia. You've got to look at yourself in the mirror and say, what the heck happened? How did I have a quarterback that was a top 5 young quarterback in the league go to what he's playing now? How could I let this happen where we completely undermine the quarterback? I mean, think about this, guys. Carson Wentz every day walks into that building seeing a statue of the backup quarterback outside. A season that should have been his. 11-2. He had them in position with the number 1 seed. He had them as the best team in football. And then the backup quarterback comes in because he gets hurt and wins the Super Bowl. So he has to deal with that. Well, guess what? He finally gets past that. They ship Nick Foles out. It's Carson Wentz and only Carson Wentz. And he balls out. He takes them all the way to the playoffs by himself with a bunch of no-name receivers. And what do the Eagles do? The first thing they do is go and draft another quarterback to put him in the same situation? How dumb can you be? How does that make any sense at all? It doesn't. And Howie Roseman deserves a lot of blame for that, no doubt. And Doug Pederson deserves a lot of blame for how he mismanaged everything. For how he handled both of them from the start. And that's an issue. And to me, if I was him, I would take a year off. I would try and understand what happened. I would look myself in the mirror because you're going to get a head coaching job again. You won a Super Bowl. You're a good coach. You just got to fix some things up. And if you do that with a year off, you'll have that chance. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. Really thanks so much of you guys for listening. Really, it means a lot. It really does. You guys are awesome. So we thank you for listening to the GSMC Football Podcast, which, as you guys know, is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show, write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Enjoy the games this weekend. Write down your notes. Send out your tweets. Let's talk about the games. We'll be full at it on Saturday morning before the games kick off. To give a full, all Saturday, we'll be talking about the games, breaking them down, see if there's any new head coaching jobs. And then on Tuesday, we will actually see how the games went, and we'll break down the NFC and AFC championship weekend coming up after that. Thanks again. Have a great night. I'm Kayvon Izami. This is the GSMC Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.